Okay, thank you, Roswan, thank you so much. Next we have Mondaire Jones. Mondaire is an attorney, nonprofit leader, activist, and congressional candidate. He's been fighting his entire life, whether in the courtroom, as an activist, or against the odds. As he runs for Congress, he's fiercely fighting for equality for all and inclusivity, and he's here today to share his stories and encourage people to join his fight. Mondaire Jones.
Right. Thanks for recognizing that I'm a little taller than that. Black Lives Matter. I want to start by thanking the students of Croton for organizing this incredible event. It reminds me of how I got my start in politics as a young person, and it is yet the latest reminder that the movement for racial justice and equity in this country is being led by young people all across this country, including right here in New York's 17th Congressional District. To the young people in particular, don't let anyone ever tell you that your efforts are in vain. Don't let anyone ever tell you that you're not qualified enough to be a public servant, that you don't have anything useful to add to the conversation, that you would be ineffective, because demonstrably that is not true, and we are defying the odds every single day. As I've said before, in recent weeks, it has been especially difficult this month to be black in America. In between running for Congress and rallying for Black lives, I've cried a lot in the way that so many black Americans have all throughout this district and all throughout this country. We have been re-traumatized by the images that we see on television and the stories that we read coming from all corners of the United States of America. But if there is one thing that gives me hope in the midst of everything going on right now in the world, it is events like this, seeing hundreds, if not thousands at some events, of white people who are using their political capital to join other folks of good conscience and fight for the kinds of reforms that we urgently and desperately need in this society. It can't just be black and brown people rallying for racial justice. We have to make sure that everyone comes together and recognizes that systemic racism is a serious and indeed existential problem in this country. And we cannot any longer allow the status quo to persist. So if there is anything that feels different, it is the composition, the demographics of events like this. And I'm so grateful that this time around, we're going to get the reforms that are long overdue and that everyone deserves in a country like the United States of America. We know that we need policing and criminal justice reforms, right? We need things like national standards in policing, standards that require you to identify who you are, that prevent you from using tactics like the chokehold, that make sure that you engage in de-escalation tactics in the way that we know police officers can do when the person that they arrest is white, right? Dylan Roof got taken to Burger King on the way into the precinct, whereas with black and Hispanic people, it's like even if you're unarmed, you are a serious threat to the lives of a police officer who has already disarmed you or accosted you. And so we need national standards in policing. We need to make sure that we have independent authorities doing the investigations and the prosecutions of police officers. It can't be the district attorneys who work every single day with police officers and who have an inherent conflict of interest there. We need to end this ridiculous practice created by the Supreme Court called qualified immunity that allows people to evade responsibility even when they've clearly violated the constitutional rights of civilians in this country. And of course, we have to go beyond that. We have to end mass incarceration as we know it. There's no reason that one country should account for 25% of the world's prison population. We have to invest in alternatives to incarceration. And yes, that means youth employment and public health initiatives and social workers. Yes, we need to decrease the funding for law enforcement and reallocate resources to things we know will improve public safety, but that don't require the policing of black and brown bodies right here in New York's 17th Congressional District. Hello. In Westchester and in Rockland counties, but also throughout these United States of America. But as you heard earlier, if we are to be effective anti-racists, our conception of systemic racism must be broader than simply the individual examples of police killings. We must recognize that systemic racism, for example, includes the practice of funding our public schools based on property taxes, resulting in the concentration of tens of millions of dollars in white communities and the deprivation of black and brown kids of critical educational opportunities. Our conception of systemic racism has to be broad and inclusive enough to include a healthcare system that conditions your ability to get necessary medical care on your economic means, disproportionately harming black and brown people in this country. Your idea of systemic racism must be inclusive and thoughtful enough to include an economic system that concentrates 90% of this country's wealth in white communities and only 5% in the black and Hispanic communities. So I encourage you to join me in being anti-racist and dismantling white supremacy in all of its forms, not just the low-hanging fruit where we got a viral video of someone getting killed for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, but we have to be more thoughtful than that. And we have to make sure that we are liberating black people, since it is Juneteenth, in all forms. We have to understand that we are in bondage before we can effectively liberate people. And so, as I think about Juneteenth, as I think about the fact that it came about 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, when there were still slaves in Texas, it is a reminder of the fact that power does not give up power so easily. You have to fight tooth and nail for justice in this country. That is precisely what I intend to do. It's what I've been doing in my life's work, and I know you feel the same way, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be here right now. And so I'm really grateful to be joined by people of good conscience, and I would encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, especially the young people who every day are changing this country and filling me with hope, and I suspect filling everyone else with hope as well. So thank you, and keep pushing, because we're gonna get this done this time. This time is different. It feels different because it is different. Thank you again.